Hi, welcome back everybody. In this video we're going to talk about printing things on the screen essentially. In every single programming language that you ever do anything with, you essentially have to print things on the screen first. That's the first step pretty much for everything. If you ever heard the phrase hello world, for example, that's the phrase that's always used. Now I made a program last video, and you're more than welcome to make another one if you haven't. It's just File, New, Project. And you select a console app. Next. Name says console app, and you can call this if you want. Again, you can put today's date, whatever that happens to be. And you can go ahead and say, intro prints, which is what we're going to talk about here. Like so. And feel free to pause if you need to catch up on anything. From this point on, here's essentially how the class will run. Obviously, if you're in person, it'll work kind of the same way, except I'll be in front of you. If you're online, well, then you'll have these lecture videos, which are the same thing I would give in person. So essentially what happens is we create a project, and what you should be doing is opening up your Visual Studios and creating that project along with me. Now you can, move your video to one side and your IDE, your Visual Studios, to the other, or you can just have a laptop and another screen, however you want to do it. But essentially you're going to follow along with me and build your program. If there's an issue or an error that comes up, we'll pause and make sure that you copied everything correctly. Things like capital letters and spacing and misspelling can break things. And of course, I'll talk about those as we go through making the code and everything. But essentially what you need to do, and I'm a firm believer of this, is get hands-on experience making things. If you just watch a PowerPoint and they explain, oh, this is how this code does this, that code does this, you won't know unless you do it yourself. The more you do it yourself, the easier it gets, the more you'll remember. If you just watch someone else do it, that's a completely different experience altogether. So from this point on, what you're going to need to do is open up your Visual Studios, and I'm going to have programs every single week, whether in class or online, and you just simply have to write those programs, listen, pay attention. If you have questions, of course, ask. More than happy to answer any questions you have. If there's any weird things going on, if in physical class, somebody would type something wrong and they would raise their hand, and I'd come over there and say, oh, well, you capitalized that or you spaced that. But pause when you need to if you're watching just the video. Obviously, you can't pause in person, but I'm more than happy to stop in person. So once you've got this named and you've got the location where you want it, just hit create, and you should get something that looks a little similar to what I've got here. Now, I'll explain what these parts and everything are. First, you'll see some green lines, more than likely. These are what's called comments, and essentially you don't actually need to have any of those. You can erase them if they bother you. But a comment is essentially code that's not going to run. So if I were to say, this is a comment, the compiler, when it checks all the code that I've written, will completely ignore this. It's just not going to do it. This is for notes. This is for things that you put in the code that, to let you or someone else know specifically what this code is doing. That's what these comments are for. Whenever you write a program, it's not guaranteed you'll remember exactly why you did a certain thing. And it's certainly not guaranteed if somebody else is working on a project that you built previously and adding to it, that they're going to know what you were thinking, or vice versa. So having notes really does help. I've had friends who were asked to add on to a project, only to find out that they could not figure out how the people previously built said project. One of my friends just decided to throw the whole thing in the trash and rebuild it from scratch because he spent days trying to figure it out and couldn't. It was just, there's a phrase that's often used, spaghetti code, because, the noodles just kind of go everywhere. You're not sure where it begins and ends. He couldn't figure out where most of the stuff went. So he essentially just built the whole thing from scratch and then added the thing that they wanted added. Of course, he is an extremely good coder and he can do that. Most people, that would be a little bit more difficult, but to each their own. But either way, comments, I would say comment as much as you can in any program. There are some teachers that 100% require it. I had a teacher back in the day, Visual Basic. If you didn't comment like most of the lines of the program, he took off like half the points. He wanted you to comment things. And really, you should. I mean, it doesn't hurt anything. So let's go through the code that this has given me. I've erased some of these comments at the bottom, but you'll see right here, we start off with this include iostream. Now, iostream, or input-output stream, allows us to do a couple of things. Let's go up here. If I can find my link here. Okay, there we go. Ta-da! This is the input-output stream. Now, when you include it at the top, it allows you to use a couple of different things here. For example, I can use cin, which we're going to see later, which is for user input. We can use cout, which is for user output. There's also an error and a log in case for errors and things like that. We won't really use that much, but as you can see, I've already got some code here written. This, in between these braces, and I would also encourage you to perhaps make a little comment at the end of that brace. All of your code, at least for now, at least most of it anyway, will go between these two braces. And it's honestly, I find it a little bit easier to keep everything in order if you comment braces. Braces are one of those things where, you know, if I'm missing one, my whole program could break. So I kind of need to have that brace there. And as we go throughout the class, you're going to have more of these braces, blocking off more code that we've added. And that's a very simple thing for someone to accidentally forget or erase or something like that. So I find putting a little comment at the end of that or any other brace makes it a little easier to organize. Now, first and foremost, this line here is how we print things. Notice we have this std, not the std you may be thinking of, but we have colon, cout, and then these two little less than signs. And then we have hello world. Now this is a simple print statement. Now it can be even further simplified if I come up here and add one line of code. Every time you need a print statement, you'd have to write it exactly like that. If you want to shorten it a little bit, if you were to go up here and do this using namespace std, you then don't need this extra little item there. You can just say cout. And what this allows you to do is essentially just omit that std portion. So, give you an example. Using namespace standard, input output, it just lets you omit that std portion of it. Now, is it a good thing to do that? Well, according to Google, it's generally considered bad practice because, it could conflict with some other things. Honestly, I mean, for a newbie programmer, I don't think it matters. You're learning how to do it. You're learning how to write programs simply. You can omit that if you want, and then you'll have to include this in front of every print statement. But when you're just learning, I think making it simpler is going to be a little easier for everybody. So simply just do that and you should be fine. If you don't want to do it, just erase it, and then again, remember every print statement that I do has to have that in front of it. I'm probably just going to use it just because it's shorter and a little bit easier for me to write. But here you are. Now, currently I just have a simple print statement with hello world, which is essentially what you get in every single program. Now you'll see it starts with cout, and then we have these two little marks here. That's essentially telling you to output. cin kind of looks the same, except things are pointed in a different direction. This right here in the quotes is what's going to be printed on my screen. Now this /n is new line. It just basically means press enter and move the cursor down one. So if I just run what the default gives me, and there's a little button up here for that, or you can hit Control F5. It'll run, it'll compile. If there's any weird error, it'll throw that up there. And you'll see this should pop up. And notice what I have in the quotes gets appeared on the screen. And since I have that /n, it gives me this extra space after that. If I had two /n's, it would give me another extra space at the end. And of course I can just, press enter and get rid of that. If I want to change this text, I can come in and just do that as well. And if I were to get rid of the little \n and run it, we'll let it compile and do its thing. There. And you see there's the slight difference there. I don't have that extra space there. But I have a new text thing that popped up. And it goes away. Now if I were to add another line, and again, if you didn't add the using namespace, you'll have to have that std, and you could have that in the front anyway, and it really wouldn't matter. If I just leave that there, and I just say chicken biscuits, and we do have to have a semicolon at the end. If I were to leave it off, let's see what happens. Build errors. It tells you there's a problem. It wasn't able to do what it's supposed to do. And in fact, you see I've got a little highlight here that shows it doesn't seem to explicitly say where the error is under this. But if you look at it, you see it says expected semicolon, which means probably right above that is where it's expected. Here, we've got it, and it says line 12. Well, it's not really line 12, it's actually line 10, but there's my error, and you see it goes away. Now, this is the thing about IDEs. If I were to do something incorrectly, it'll underline it. Sometimes it will know what you're trying to do. You can guess. Other times, it's not sure. So it says identifier COU is undefined. It means it doesn't know what that is. That's not a thing. So it's complaining. And misspelling is very common. Capitalizing something when it should be lowercase is very common. Or just leaving something off. One of the things you'll learn programming-wise is you'll spend a lot of time fixing your screw-ups. That's just part of programming. And of course, if I throw in a /n at the end of each of these, and that does have to be in the quotes, and I run it, I'll get fuzzy pickles and chicken biscuits and nothing else, see? Now if I take off the /n in the first one, let's see how that changes things. They're on the same line. So the /n essentially just makes it so the next line is going to appear on the next line, just like that. Now I can also do some simple math. In this case, I can say, well, let's just say if I did 5 plus 5, what do you think would appear on my screen? Well, let's see. 10. There we go. So it actually did the math. Now, if I were to say 2 times 5 plus 5, what will we get? Well, if you remember the order of operations, PIMDOS, right? Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. It's going to go in that order. So it's not going to add these first. It's going to do the multiplication first. If I were to, flip this around and say 5 plus 5 times 2, yep, there we go. It's still going to do the multiplication first. It always does multiplication first. So this would be 10 plus 5 is 15. And I just run it. And of course it went a little too high. There we go. 15. Now, if somebody didn't understand the order of operations, they might see this and think, well, that should be 20. 5 plus 5 is 10, times 2 is 20. And then you would run it and see that it didn't give you the same result. That's a particular type of error we'll talk about later, but that's wrong. You have to know the order of operations so you know if your output is what it's supposed to be. Now, of course, I can do this like this. What if I were to do 5 plus 5 like this? Or let's just say 5 plus 5 times 2. What does that do? Well, notice I'm in the quotes. So if I run this, you'll see it gives me those quotes. Oh, and my 15 ended up on the same line since I didn't put the / in at the end of this. If you want to put the / in, I can say, in this case, let's see, can I just do that? It's been a little while, so let's find out if I can just do that. I think that's going to have an issue. Let's see. Nope. Chicken biscuits, 5 times 2, it displayed. Where'd my 15 go? Knew that would have an issue. That's okay. We'll fix that in just a second. So, in Java, this is how you would do it. In Python, you would actually have a little comma here, and you'd run that. But I'm pretty sure, let's see, we're going to have an issue with that. It's still running, just not doing kind of what I want it to do. So let me give you a little tip on what we can do. There's a couple of things we can do. The easiest, simplest way would just be to do this. Make another line like so, and voila, 15, it'll move it down. That's one way we can do it. If I want to do it at the end of this, then I just simply have to, well, if I don't know, let's Google it. So I'll come here and let's see. We'll say printing text and a variable. C++. And we'll just check and see what it has to say. So I can print something. Okay. Here we go. There's our option. And this is one important thing I'll tell you. When programming, you're not going to have all the answers sometimes. Maybe you haven't done it in a while. Maybe you aren't quite sure about something. Maybe you haven't done it enough to remember it off the top of your head. So knowing how to search for things can be very helpful. Knowing what you're looking for. I've had somebody come in here who was doing a Visual Basic program, and I hadn't done Visual Basic in like 15 years. And it was giving them a weird error. They said they've been searching, trying to figure out what the problem is. They couldn't figure it out. I showed them how to fix that in like a minute or two. Not because I'm good at Visual Basic, but because I know how to search for answers for things. Here's how we do this in C++. So not a plus, not a comma, but just another little output sign. And that should display what we want. So let's go back, take a quick look. All right. I can comment this line out if I want, or I can just come up here and just say doot quotes /in. And I should have 2 lines now between those two. Let's see if that worked. Yay, it did. So whenever we want to add extra stuff, and I can add some more here if I want to. Oh no, Mac, there we go. We can do this chicken, let's say, for example. I'm picking food here, that's a very common theme. But check it out, chicken, and then I had a /in, so it gave me an extra space. So we can do this pretty much as many times as we need. This just adds another thing to the end, whether it's \in, whether it's a text, whether it's a number. So if I were doing this, and I can put some parentheses here if I need to, 5 plus 5 times 2. So what this should do is display that. I probably want an equal sign there. And then the actual math after that. So let's see if that works. 5 plus 5 times 2 is 15. So yeah, it worked. And I can press enter. So these are your basic print statements here. Nothing too dramatic. You just have to know a little bit about how each of these little items work. Cout, or you can use the std : cout if you don't have the using namespace. For beginning programming, I don't think it matters which one you do. If you think it's going to be a little bit easier to do this, that's fine, I think. It's considered better practice to do this, but that's because in upper level programming, there may be some conflicts with some of the things you do. But for learning and everything like that, I think simplicity makes it a little bit easier. So try and be flexible, make it so you know the difference, and you could use either one if you wanted to. But this is the rough outline of how print statements work. Everything goes between these braces. Cout is what you use to print things. We can print text or numbers, or combinations of text and numbers. If we put numbers inside of this, and this is what's considered a string or words, even though those are numbers, it's not going to do the math. It's going to, display the text. Now over here, you notice they're a different color. I don't have any quotes around them. Those are numbers, so it's actually going to do the math in this case. So that's the difference between putting a quote around something and not. If I don't put a quote around something, it's going to take it at its value if it's a number. If I do put a quote around something, then it's just going to display it as text. That's the major difference there. So now, what I want you to do is hold on to this file, because we're going to go about turning it in here in just a moment. And that'll be in the next video. How to turn in assignments, how that's roughly going to work, how you go about that. So hold on to this thing. The next thing we want to do is actually submit this so you can get an idea of how that process works. So see you hopefully in a minute in the next video.